Hello, welcome to this game review. We'll have a look at a game from the Dutch defense and we'll try to understand some ideas. Later the game became very complicated, as usual in chess, and it's difficult to generalize what was happening there, but before that it is quite clear. So it started as the Dutch, c4, knight f6, and e6, so this is kind of the start of the classical Dutch. If black played g6, this would be the Leningrad. If e6, d5, it will be the Stonewall. So black can still play the Stonewall if he wants. Knight f3. And here black played this d6 move, which is a bit of a mistake, but to understand why it's a mistake, it's important to understand what the Dutch defense is all about. So first, on move 1 and on move 2, and consequently, we're fighting for the e4 square. So similarly to the Nimzo-Indian, black is trying to control the e4 square so that white cannot take control of it, and also we would like to put a piece there. So here usually black would play something like b6, and though in such cases white can answer with d5, and also this is one of the reasons why it's recommended to fianchetto the light squared bishop, so that black will not be able to play b6, because the bishop would be very nice on this diagonal, because on this diagonal it's already closed. And that's why also black plays moves like bishop b4, so that he could get more control over the e4 square. And for example, after, let's say, g3, b6, black is in general doing quite well here. He has a decent Nimzo-Indian position with f5 already played, and later he can play knight e4 and maybe attack on the king side somehow. But after d6, the problem is not only can white just continue to the normal type of variations, but he can also play queen c2. The problem is here white will play e4 next move, and black cannot do anything about this. So he did not control e4 enough, and after e4 is played, usually black will be a bit worse because of the backward pawn on e6. Also his king position will always be weak, and this is one of the reasons why the Dutch is not a very good opening. It's very harmful for our king. But okay, here we transposed into the normal type of lines. Knight e4, so black is trying to play on the king side eventually. Queen c2 takes, and bishop f6. This is one of the ways to play. Here a little bit better would be a5 to preempt the b4 move, as white's plan in this position is usually either to play e4, which black should try to stop, or to expand on the queen side. So this move is in general helpful for black, because if white opens the a file, black can take off his bad rook. Okay, bishop f6 is also natural enough. Rook d1, knight d7. So now black is trying to play e5, presumably, though knight d7 kind of ruins his coordination a little bit. It's not clear where the knight is trying to go here, as the f6 square is taken, and it blocks the bishop, and the bishop cannot really go out here because this one is staring down the diagonal. So bishop f4, g5, but g5 is a strange move, because the bishop is already badly placed here, because it will run into e5. So it's unclear why black would like to open his king position and kick the bishop off here. He can just play like this and play e5 next move, which is in general black's plan. Later he can decide what to do next, maybe e4, and black is in general doing quite well if he gets e5. Okay, g5, now the position slowly becomes a bit chaotic. Black is not really developing his pieces, but in general it's quite difficult to develop them at this point. Queen c2 is a nice move. It stops e5 because of queen takes f5. Okay, now some moves happen. Black gets his pieces out a little bit, and white plays this very strange move h4, to which black also reacts very strangely with f4. So h4 is a bit difficult for me to understand, as what I see is 4 pieces defending this square and only 2 pieces for white defending. So the automatic question is, why are we not taking this free pawn? Maybe white is trying to distract our pieces or something so that he could do something on the queen side, but I don't really see it. Here I just see a free pawn. If white takes, we will take it, and black will just be a pawn ahead for nothing. Of course, he will still have to develop the pieces somehow, but also white's king is quite weak. So, of course, f4 has some logic behind it. Now that g3 is weakened, we can use it to open the king, but we didn't really have to do this. We can just open the king by also taking a free pawn. So, as often is said, usually the best solution is the simplest solution. So here f4 is not too accurate. Now some complications ensue. White's king gets opened a little bit, but at the same time black is not really developing his pieces, while white is very well developed. King g1 and e5, and this is the problem. Black is opening up the center, opening up white's d1 rook, white's queen and other rook, also giving a target for the knight, and all while these two pieces are still at home. So in general, shouldn't be opening up the position when we're not developed. Black should probably again modestly develop his last pieces. There's nothing special about this, put a bishop here, maybe rook here or something, and then think about opening the position. But we shouldn't really do such things without developing the pieces. The engine also suggests knight e7. The point being that these are some interesting squares which the knight can eye up, but this doesn't make as much sense as the simple bishop d7. e5, and now the position gets opened, and black gives this check, which is quite tempting, but after king h1 there is no real checkmate here. Black is a bit too optimistic here, and now if he takes it back, now his bad development will tell after rook d8, and black is just lost after such moves. So rook f5, black is trying to checkmate, knight g4, and white can simply go back and defend. Maybe he could play even more accurately somehow, but this is good enough. And now black is completely lost. He is a piece down, and he doesn't really have big enough threats because white is doing everything with check. He even takes this bishop. At this point there's no checkmate threat, and black's king is also quite weak. Here the best move was bishop takes b7, and it's not necessarily because white can win a pawn. The pawn itself is not very relevant, but it's more that the bishop got out of the g file with tempo, and the next move is rook g1, after which rook g8 is a big issue, opening up some lanes for the king. And importantly, the rook is attacked, so black doesn't have time to react to everything. Instead, queen c7 doesn't really use the pieces effectively. Rook e8, rook f7 of course was a lot better to cover the 7th rank. Rook e8, white takes some pawns. At this point white is completely winning, gives a check, but now makes a terrible move, which is rook takes f7. And here white had 30 minutes, so it's not very excusable to not find the move rook c8, after which white wins all of black's pieces and black can resign after taking here and here. But I guess white wasn't really up to the task to play a serious game, and even though he had the winning position, it's not enough to have winning position, we still have to win the game, and white just gave away his queen and the game ended quite abruptly. But of course, white was completely winning here. Black was way too optimistic in his attack, and this is kind of the problem with the Dutch defense, that we're creating positional concessions, which we have to compensate with by dynamics, or in other words, tricks. So whether or not there are tricks in the position, we still have to go for them, which is not a very healthy way of playing chess.